What is it that we fear so much about Alzheimer's? It's an early death, if you will, even though the person remains alive.
I want to know so that I can plan my death. When the dementia comes, I can organize a really nice party.
There is a specialty for dealing with people with dementia. It's not something you just make up on the fly. And for some reason, we can't bring ourselves to actually train the people who are dealing with these people to keep our loved ones safe.
The total debt level per family is about $750,000. So you're looking at a country that is on course to become the first nation of negative millionaires.
So even when I'm laying deep down in the earth, don't tell mama where her children hide.
From the Zoomerplex in historic Liberty Village, The Zoomer with Conrad and Denise Donald.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to The Zoomer. Today we're talking about Alzheimer's and dementia.
I have a very, I think, very humorous conversation. It could not be otherwise with that great man, Mark Steyn, who one of our colleagues referred to as a rabble-rouser, which he would be if there were any rabble in Canada.
There's no rabble. We're a rabble-free zone.
No, we're a middle-class country.
Okay, so today, we asked a very existential question. If you could be tested for a disease that you might not develop for, say, another 30 years, would you do it? And if you did the test and the results were positive, might that change the way you live?
Sounds a little like Breaking Bad, doesn't it?
Okay.
I guess I would take the test, and I guess certainly the results, if they were negative, I mean negative to my interests, I would change what I did and how I lived.
You'd run amok?
I would not stand in my underwear, try unsuccessfully to commit suicide, and then throw my revolver at the fire department.
Okay, then well, we can cross that off the list. Let's tee up the topic. Mark Twain once said, "Of all the things I've lost, I miss my mind the most." Ozzy Osbourne said it too, but he probably just forgot he'd heard it before. Sadly, mild cognitive impairment is no longer a laughing matter. It often leads to bigger problems. In 2011, 747,000 Canadians were living with Alzheimer's disease or related dementia. By 2031, that number could double. If so, the cost of treating the disease will jump from $33 billion to almost $300 billion in 2040. Oh, and that $33 billion doesn't include the 444 million unpaid hours racked up by family caregivers. It doesn't take a brain surgeon to realize we need a comprehensive plan to deal with dementia. 83% of Canadians agree, but Canada is one of the only G8 countries without a national strategy. A strategy that would preserve the dignity and human rights of the afflicted, as well as provide safety, support, and solutions for all. Because, as Mark Twain also said, age is an issue of mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. Researchers have created a blood test that can tell individuals if they will develop Alzheimer's disease years before it will happen. So the question becomes, would you want to know if you're going to have a serious disease you could do nothing about? I think I might. Well, I mean, I think I'd want to know. And if I did know, if it proved positive, then I'd say, how do I squeeze every moment of goodness out of every day that I've got? What do you think, John?
No, I agree. I think I'd want to seize the moment. You know, the other thing is that if a lot of people took the test and found out that they had Alzheimer's coming down the road, there might be a lot of pressure
on the government
to fund research to find a cure for Alzheimer's. So I think it's probably not a bad thing.
It would be very demoralizing, though.
It would be, but you'd know how much time you have, in a sense, rather than hitting this wall.
Does it tell you that, Denise? Allegedly, does it tell you that?
I don't think it tells you.
This coming down the track, which I think is...
No, but it could be 30 years from now.
It's no different than having a history of cancer in your family, right? Or a heart attack or stroke.
Well, but if you have a history of Alzheimer's in your family, you would know that already.
That's right, so why take the test? I mean, what's
Well,
so
apparently
special about
they did 2 control groups in the US, and the results were based on lipid levels in the blood, and they were correct 90% of the time over 5 years. So it's a pretty solid diagnostic tool. The only problem is there's no cure for it, right? If you had cancer, it was like, okay, I'll make sure I get my mammograms or whatever, maybe not in your case, Todd.
Just thank you. The push-ups are working, glad to know.
What do you think, Kit? Would you have the test?
Absolutely not.
No?
No, I think the issue here is more What is it that we fear so much about Alzheimer's? It's an early death, if you will, even though the person remains alive. So what is it that we fear about death becomes the issue. As the ancients used to talk about death on your left shoulder, let's live like that. And if one has Alzheimer's, we will work within that parameter.
That's why I want to know. I want to know so that I can plan my death. And I want to know that when the dementia comes, they will have a certain course which is typical of that and perhaps not typical of some other forms of dementia. And that I can organize a really nice party, which will be my farewell party.
But Ronald, you wouldn't need to know that years in advance, would you? You would see it, you would feel it coming on, you would have a test then, and then you'd organize whatever you wanted.
But since you don't know how many years you'll have, you might as well know in advance. I'm told you know that you're going to die. You don't know how many years ahead.
Conrad, what would you do?
Well, my father suffered from Alzheimer's, and I saw an extraordinarily brilliant man just destroyed in front of our eyes, and he couldn't even remember our names. And so I'm with the party guy here, so I would totally have the big party, and I would stick sticky tape all over my house, and I'd probably ride my Harley off a cliff when I still could. Maybe. I don't know.
Todd?
I was going to say it would really become an issue if the health insurance companies decided to put pressure on the government to say this needs to be enforced. Because if we can know, we should know, because it will affect premiums, it will affect the way in which we deliver services, etc. Then you have an issue. Because then if you're forcing me to do something I don't want to do because you think it's expedient, that's a problem. But as long as no one's forcing me, I'm not really up in arms about it either way.
Well, all kinds of things might change. Employers might deny employment to employees knowing that there was, something.
Well, it's like the health test you take when you get life insurance. Oh, Alzheimer's, sorry, you can't. I'm not going to touch you with a 10-foot pole.
But that's remote, Denise. I mean, a person, how old, if I may ask, was your father when he came down to it?
He was old. He was, well, not, I don't, how old was he? He died when he was 83. He was 77 when he died. But he had lost his business.
That Alzheimer's actually abbreviates your life.
No, not much anyway.
Right, so then why have the test then, if it's something that happens naturally over the course of time?
Yeah, but I think what I would say is that there's a real problem with institutional care and with familial denial around Alzheimer's. So I've seen this in my own family, where if I were in a position where I could use the diagnosis as leverage to ensure that where I wind up is, appropriate. I mean, the system is terrible right now in Ontario in particular. It's just awful.
Come live in the States.
Well, yeah.
Well, there you go.
So if you could at least get past that really difficult place where you're in denial and the family's in denial. It's like, he's just a normal thing. Memory, it's then maybe you're in a better position to actually, when you do lose your memory, if you don't want to commit suicide as such, you can actually be in a place that doesn't treat you like crap.
But Patricia, do you think that the proposed measure would assist in I think we can all agree with what you would like to do, but would this measure actually assist in that?
I think so, only insofar as that's what I've witnessed in my extended family, is a certain degree of psychological resistance.
It's a terrible thing. All of us, I'm sure, have seen it in somebody, and it's a terrible thing.
So if you're in a position to say, well, I know you don't want to think this about me, but I actually have some degree of proof that this is going to happen, I wouldn't do it 30 years in advance, but I might do it 5 years
I'd start working on that memoir right away.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Anne Marie, what do you think?
Well, I think it would be a huge loss of quality of life if we knew in advance that you were going to have Alzheimer's. I think that we would waste too much time preparing for it. I think that it's all about life and living, and shouldn't we be living life to the fullest anyway?
But we don't. I think I'm wasting too much time already. In fact,
but would it really be helpful to your sort of productivity and creativity if you knew that someday you were going to get Alzheimer's?
I think it would help.
I don't think it would help me.
We
I think
all
I would be
respond to
frozen with
different
fear.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I think
it would be such a pall over my life.
It'd be so
Change-
demoralizing.
I wouldn't want to
It would
know.
change
And you're
the
a
quality.
young lady, and you might get it when you're 90 years old or something. So
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
I think that since we can do tests for breast cancer and colon cancer, and so there's something that we can do preventatively, but with Alzheimer's, there isn't. And so it would be like a loss of that time that you could be enjoying life instead of worrying about where you're going to spend your last few years, or what are my kids going to do about it, or I don't want to end up here, or I don't want to end up there. I think that it would just take away a huge quality.
A friend of mine, dearly departed,
was given a lung transplant and told that he had 3 years on this lung. And he got 9 years before he passed away. But I have never met a man who was more carpe diem ever. He was always just trying to get every moment of joy out of everything he did. And it was the same thing. I think, why can't we just do that naturally and enjoy the lives we have? Why do we have to have, you know, something
Well, it's just
over our
living on
shoulders?
borrowed time thing. I think the
Yeah.
psychological
We all are
framework's
anyway.
different.
We all anyway. That's
I know,
the
but
thing, we are
psychologically.
anyway. We have to live a day at a time fully anyway, with faith, regardless, you know. But I'd still want the party just because I could have one. And then I will
Colette
deny,
wants the party.
And then I will deny that I have Alzheimer's because I believe in mind over the body, too.
Take the test, then burn it.
Yeah.
There you go.
I've
Well,
taken other
obviously, a lot of different opinions around the table, and I mean, I'm just glad that there's a choice. There you go. So, lots of news recently, panel, on tragedies involving dementia and nursing homes. In Vernon, BC, a 95-year-old war vet faced charges for allegedly killing an 85-year-old roommate. Happened in a residential care home. In Winnipeg in 2011, Frank Alexander, who was 87, died after being pushed. And then just recently in Toronto, Francisco de Silva, who was 87, died after an altercation with a fellow resident. He's been charged with second-degree murder. I don't know. It seems like what used to be uncommon is now escalating.
60 murders in nursing homes in 1 year in Canada.
That is an astounding. Is that, it's new, or just maybe we didn't know about it before?
Maybe we didn't know about before. Maybe we didn't pay attention. You know, it's not only that there is a great deal more dementia now as the population ages, but that the nursing homes are not equipped to deal with them. Full stop. 60% of the people who go into nursing homes now have some form of dementia, primarily because people are staying at home longer. And so by the time they get into institution, they really do need heavy care, and they're not set up for it. The nurses are not trained, they don't have the facilities, they don't have the lockdown, they don't have the programs. People are not safe. And so this is the kind of thing that we really have to deal with. Of course, we're going to mourn every single one of these deaths, but we have to start doing something, and we're not.
In terms
in
of
this
having
field.
a national strategy, France has one, the UK has one, the United States has one kind of halfway done, and we're still at this, I say we because I'm a volunteer with the Alzheimer's Society. We have not one now before the government. We're hoping to push it at the G8 upcoming because David Cameron has said dementia, a dementia summit, is something that he would like to push. So maybe we can get it internationally when we can't get it nationally.
Well, I'm a little bit worried about strategies because they use up all their energy on a strategy and actually make no changes on the ground. I'm more interested in some of the programs that are being introduced in the States and some places in Canada where staff, frontline staff, start figuring out how best to deal with people who have dementia, to keep them safe.
We may not be doing it adequately from this standpoint, but it's not as if they're a completely ignored area right now.
No, they're not completely ignored, but the special needs of those suffering from dementia are incredibly high. If you look just in Ontario, they class 10%, or approximately 8,000 of the dementia patients are aggressive, are going to have the kind of problems that we've seen in these
So the
care
8,000 potentially aggressive ones are just mixed in with the
They're
other.
mixed
Well, that's going to lead to trouble. Yeah.
It's becoming a kind of turf war because personal service workers, who are most of the workers, are not regulated. But my experience of them is that some are absolutely fantastic and some not so much. So the personal service workers chime in and say, we just need more of us, we need more employment. Then the nurses chime in and say, no, you need nurses. So it's almost like a union turf war.
Well, of course, and all of them need to be better trained.
Right.
In actual fact, there is a specialty for dealing with people with dementia. It's not something you just make up on the fly. And for some reason, we can't bring ourselves to actually train the people who are dealing with these people to keep our loved ones safe.
Is that a cost-benefit issue?
No, I think it's lack of attention. You know, I think that this has been happening all the time. There is now much more congestion in the nursing homes. And I don't think in the past they were charged with murder, frankly. They just sort of thought that that's what happens. Now that we're hearing the charges,
at least that'll bring attention to the issue. And we hope some kind of action.
But prevention of violence is really what you're talking about.
Of course
it
it
has
is.
to be either preventive by some sort of further medication, or it requires, more custodial people.
There's the problem with using chemical restraints in nursing homes. There actually is in the profession, and now I'm going to get to the limit of what I actually know, where the way you treat a person who has dementia matters. You can actually de-escalate their aggressiveness by reaching out to their hallucination. If they think they're on a plane, say, isn't this plane going well? And that calms them down. If you tell them you're not on a plane, they get aggressive. There are those things that people can do.
Violence is not necessarily endemic to Alzheimer's disease in particular. It is a stage through which the person goes. And you're right, treated properly and carefully, these things don't happen. The violence breaks out, I think, in many cases due to confusion and fear. Fear makes them react. It isn't that they are simply being aggressive for the sake of aggression and they're out to murder somebody. That's not really what's going through, I think, the typical Alzheimer patient's mind.
Dale, are some provinces in this country better than others? Because it's essentially a provincial responsibility.
It's a provincial responsibility because of the care. The province of Ontario a few years ago had a provincial strategy that put money into it. They let the money peter away and nothing much happened there. That was the end of it. But I think you'll find varying degrees of care.
Say a rich province like Alberta or something, do they have a better
I don't think
standard?
you can necessarily say that it's any better in Alberta. It's all a matter of how many people you have looking after how many people. And in all the cases I hear, all the personal service workers who come to me with their problems, there are never enough of them. Never enough. They're left on their own. They're left ringing the bell because they need to go to the bathroom. They're left crying for food. Some of these cases are absolutely outrageous. And if you don't think in some cases that would lead to a violence or frustration,
right?
Of course it does.
These things happen between roommates.
Yeah,
So I mean,
Well, you strike out
presumably
at
a
who's
single,
there, right? Yeah.
presumably putting them in their own rooms might be helpful.
But if someone has dementia, how do you charge that? Because you're not in your right mind. So is dementia an excuse, or is it?
It's a really interesting point.
How do you charge that?
Yeah.
And what sort of sentence if there's a conviction?
Well,
for
that's
an 87-year-old person.
That's exactly right. If you
Right.
can't prove mens rea, if you can't prove the guilty mind, if you can't prove the intent to kill, you can't get a conviction.
No, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't
Which
be.
goes back to
Most
your,
families
which goes
don't
back
really
to your
care
point
if
about
anybody is
prevention.
charged. Most families just want their parents and loved ones safe. And they want to protect their own family members. They are distraught if their family member is the one who has committed this assault. And what we're not doing is just focusing on the actual interactions of people within the nursing homes. The training of the staff, the funding, all of these things matter when you're dealing with people, 24/7.
We have to hope for a national policy that, while it won't be a panacea, at least imposes consistency and a balance between giving these poor sufferers of this terrible illness as much freedom as they can without endangering themselves or anyone else.
Yeah, right, and supporting their loved ones. We're going to be back in a flash with the amazing blues singer Shakura Saida. Stay tuned.
Raised to be great, never had no wants. I wasn't a bad child, heard more do's and don'ts. And maybe that's why I turned to the devil's side. So even when I'm laying face down Found truth on a hill, maybe good for a while, but then I need my old thrills. Maybe that's why I turn to the devil's side. Oh, yeah. So even when I'm laying deep down in the earth, don't tell mama where her children hide. No, 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 no. Even when I'm laying deep down in the earth, don't tell mama where her children hide. Oh. Don't try to save me, don't be my friend. If you lift me up, I'll pour right back down again. Don't want a new life, I like the old. Ain't got no ties and I've already lost my soul. I've already lost my soul. I've already lost my soul. My soul. My soul. When this life is over and this breath is gone, don't shed no tears, just move along. I lived like full, I lived it hard. Got no regrets, I got no brand new starts. Don't tell my mama, don't tell my mama, don't tell my mama where I'm hiding. Don't tell my mama where, oh, where, no. Don't you tell, oh, where I'm hiding. Just move along. I got no more tears. Don't tell my mama. Don't tell my mama I lost my soul. I lost my soul. I lost my soul. My soul.
I have to say, Conrad, I learned a great deal from you this season, I think.
That's extremely flattering, Denise. And I found that you expressed in much more clearly than I'd ever heard before a number of viewpoints I didn't always agree with, but thought they were very well formulated and very interesting. So you've educated me too.
There you go. And we had some adventures. Okay, the money goes here. No tipping.
Where's the business manager?
Did you get your bus pass yet?
I'm waiting for the election.
Oh, okay then. And you, Conrad, you taught me how to bank more efficiently. Remember that?
Yes, although you had a charming manner with the teller.
It always helps. Hi there.
Hi.
I'm here about a new mortgage.
Oh, do you have any collateral?
Why, yes. That was easy.
Denise, you did more than just teach me things. You transformed me spiritually.
Really?
Yes.
And breathe deeply. Let your breath do your work.
You might want to loosen your tie.
And breathe third eye.
All season long, we have tackled some fascinating topics, sometimes a little bit divisive in terms of the issues, but they've always led to some lively conversations around the round table, and also in our feature interviews. Conrad, anything stand out for you? Any favorites?
Quite a few, actually. But of all of them, I think perhaps the conversation I had with the mayor, Rob Ford.
Right.
It was a turning point, and after that, the move to try and chase him out in midterm subsided. But there was certainly no, nor should there have been any whitewash of the problems he had.
Right. Well, that created a big ruckus.
Do you assert absolutely that there is no just legal problem for you looking forward in the sense of a possible prosecution?
No, if I've done something illegal, I've told the police to arrest me.
Yeah. And you are in effect saying to the Crown Law Office and the police, put up or shut up. If you got a charge, lay the charge.
Absolutely, I want them to. And if they want me to do a drug test, a urine test, I'll do one right now. If there's any drugs in my system, any alcohol in my system, I have no problem doing that test. And if they...
Rob, there's absolutely no need to do a urine test right now.
So given your experience with that interview, any predictions about the current mayoral campaign?
No, I wouldn't want to predict it, but I will say this. Like yourself and many of our viewers, I have some reservations about the mayor's stylistic approach to his office, but it would be a mistake to underestimate the support he has. After that interview, whenever I was in a public place, people would come up and they would almost always be supportive of the mayor. And these people think that the criticism of him is of things that they don't particularly object to, that many people do, and it's essentially just a lot of pompous snobbery and hypocrisy. Now, I don't think that that is a fair description of the mayor's critics, but it's out there, and Ford Nation is not a myth. I mean, he does have a lot of supporters.
Well, no, but I also think there's a danger in confusing, celebrity with statesmanship, right? People come up, he thinks he's popular because they're always like doing the selfie with him. Yeah. It's not because they have deep admiration about his leadership qualities.
I don't know. You may be right, Denise, but this time I think we're just going to have to wait for the voters to speak. I may be wrong, but I suspect he has quite a lot of popularity.
Anyway, we haven't always seen eye to eye, right? Particularly on that one.
No, he is a very nice man. I'm not saying he should be reelected, but he's a very nice man and he cares about the city. But whether he should be reelected, I wouldn't comment on that.
Okay, well, I will. Please, no. One discussion that stands out for me was the environment episode, right? Remember that one? And I felt maybe, just maybe at the end of the show, you might possibly have been considering changing your stance.
Not really, but I wanted to emphasize that I would change it if I saw evidence that confirmed what those who didn't agree with me were saying. I mean, I don't agree that there is any global warming. It's 1 degree in 70 years. I do not agree that 5 degrees brings on an ice age. That may be scientific parlance, but it's not what the great public here or in any other country thinks an ice age is. It's just the difference in the winter between Winnipeg and Toronto. But I certainly am open-minded about it. I'll just go by the evidence as best I can assess it.
Well, I would always accept the scientific evidence and thousands and thousands
divided,
of reports.
Denise.
It isn't divided.
Don't try
like
and pretend it isn't.
99% of scientists agree, and 1% disagrees, and we chose to espouse those opinions. I don't know.
No, Denise. No? I mean, if I were you, while you were brushing up your science, you brush up your arithmetic. It isn't 99 to 1. It's a very severe division.
2. However, it's certainly not 50-50.
It's not an election either.
Okay, he didn't move closer at all. I thought we won that one. We're going to be back in a second with your very funny conversation with Mark Steyn.
At the time of your case, a neighbor of mine in New Hampshire was attracted the attention of the United States Department of Justice, which is a corrupt institution.
The greatest racketeering organization in the world.
Welcome back, Conrad. Give us a backstory on Mark Steyn. You used to be his boss, right?
Yes, well, I must say he's a delightful man personally, but he's an uncommonly difficult employee. If an editor inadvertently drops a comma, he was writing for us in 10 different publications in 4 different countries. He would just stop with everyone, and all of a sudden all the editors would say, where's his copy? And so he is a complicated person, but a very loyal friend and a brilliant man and a very entertaining man. And he's now locked in a libel suit in the United States. And he's battling out for his right to debunk the famous media hockey stick of the global warming advocates.
Are we back on global warming again?
I'm afraid we are not going to get away from it until you global warmers admit that there's no such thing as global warming.
Never, never.
My guest today is my friend of a great many years and fellow columnist, the National Review and elsewhere, Mark Steyn, a legendary figure with an immense following all over the English-speaking world, and indeed parts of the French-speaking world too. Thanks for joining us, Mark.
I was sitting at the Tim Hortons on the Township's auto route in Magog, Quebec, and my sole francophone fan from Sherbrooke, Quebec, came up and buttonholed me in Tim Hortons. So you were correct to say that I'm a legend in the French-speaking world.
Exactly, and they know you, but they don't remember who Tim Horton was.
Right.
Mark, you're now in the midst of some litigation. If it doesn't come from you, I'm afraid our viewers won't believe quite the absurdity of this latest manifestation of the workings of the American justice system. What's actually gone on here?
Yes, I'm being sued in the District of Columbia Superior Court. Michael Mann, who's a climatologist, who is the man behind the famous hockey stick graph that the government of Canada, I believe, distributed to every man, woman and child in the country, basically showing the 20th century as this blade of the hockey stick shooting up out of the ceiling of the graph around about 1999, yes. And plainly looking as if we're all going to be broiling by about 2014, which we're not. And this was used by the IPCC to gin up the whole, I would say, to change the level of debate about climate change and the environment.
Into one of outright hysteria.
Yeah, and the sky is falling stuff. Yeah. And he's now suing me. He claimed in the complaint to accuse me of the crime of defamation of a Nobel Prize winner, because he's not a Nobel laureate.
He no more won the Nobel Prize than we did.
No, well, in fact, he won the Nobel Prize in the same sense that I did. He once wrote a report for the IPCC, and they were co-awarded. They won half a Nobel Prize with Al Gore in 2007. In the same way, I'm a Nobel laureate because my mother is Belgian, and in 2012, the European Union was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize.
I'm a UK citizen, so I feel that I'm a Nobel laureate also.
That's true. This is the first time, I think, on your show we've had a Nobel to Nobel conversation.
It's as if the inventor of insulin met with Lester Pearson, or something like that. Dr. Banting.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. This will be an interesting case for the First Amendment. In that,
which Canadians might not know, it's really the right to freedom of expression.
Yes, but the First Amendment really isn't worth that much if it takes you 5 years and a 7-figure sum to establish your right to say something, which is what it looks like it's going to take in my case. And that's a very high price to pay. And what I find repugnant is I mean, you know all this back to front, because your case was a highly evolved example of that. But what's fascinating me is about all the worst features of American justice. For example, the settlement, the assumption that you won't exercise your right to be tried by a jury of your peers, but that simply initiating the legal process will force you to so-called settle, as they say. Yeah. You know, I wrote a 200-word blog post. And there are, I think, at the moment, 7 separate counts, 7 separate complaints that Michael Mann has filed against me. And it's easy to foresee a jury saying we'll quit on 6 of them, but we'll find him guilty on the 7th, and that in itself will be enough for damages in the high 7 figures. I mean, it's very corrupt, that.
It is, but 99.5% success rate for prosecutions. It's about 61% in Ontario.
Right.
It's a little over 50% in the United Kingdom.
Right.
And that's not because our prosecutors are incompetent.
No.
It's because the defense has some rights. And the shocking thing to me is, of that 99.5%, 97% are without a trial.
Right.
Because the plea bargain system is so abused. If they target you, they go after the 8 people closest to you in the activity objected to, and they say, I'm sure you remember some incriminating evidence about Mr. Steyn, and your friends will say, no, I certainly do not. He's an honest man. I don't believe he did anything criminal. I said, well, you better jog your memory, because if you don't, it's a conspiracy of silence. You're part of it, and we'll indict you.
Right. I mean, I find, at the time of your case, a neighbor of mine in New Hampshire was attracted the attention of the United States Department of Justice, which is a corrupt institution.
The greatest racketeering organization in the world.
And the Department of Justice decides he's guilty of some contractual infraction. 7 years. Destroyed his marriage, drove him to I think 2 or 3 suicide attempts. He eventually winds up in federal court in Brattleboro, Vermont, and a jury tosses it out of there in 45 minutes.
Given the correlation of forces between the United States of America and its local Canadian quisling acolytes on the one side and myself on the other, I count it as something of a success that, as you can see, I'm still married, I'm not broke, and my mental health is quite good.
No, you're still standing. But I mean, a lot of the whole point of the system is to say it's not worth you exercising your claim to innocence.
It is a great country, and in my way, I'm still pro-American, despite what they did to me. It's a wonderful country, and the right to be proud of it. But it isn't exceptional other than in its scale. In all other respects, it is the supreme irony that we owe it the triumph of democracy in the world, but it isn't a very well-functioning democracy.
Americans are basically, the total debt level per family is about $750,000. So you're looking at a country that is on course to become the first nation of negative millionaires. I mean, it is...
By which you mean every man, woman, and child is a negative millionaire.
Right. And if you just run those numbers, total federal debt per person in Canada, $12,000. Total federal debt in New Zealand, $15,000. In Australia, $12,000. In New Zealand, $15,000. In Canada, $18,000. In America, $54,000.
But in Germany, it's only about $7,000.
Right. At some point, people have to grapple with the fact that these numbers outpunch all your mythology. There's an assumption, I think, in Washington among the political class that nothing can be done, and that the institutions of Washington don't allow for meaningful course correction.
233 years of American independence that built up a deficit of $10 trillion in 2009, and now it's almost $18 trillion. It's just unbelievable. Well, Mark, do we or do we not agree that the United States will, in fact, pull itself together at some point?
I'm torn. I fell in love with New Hampshire, and I fell in love with the New England town meeting system of government. I believe in that system of a decentralized republic of self-governing citizens. You cannot amass power at the center the way Obama and others have done in a nation of 300 million and not expect it to transform itself into something utterly unrecognizable from the United States as it has been throughout its history. It has to be, I think, a decentralized republic or nothing.
Mark, it's always lovely to talk to you, or with you.
Lovely to talk with you too. And by the way, I must say something. I was completely disgusted by the actions of whatever committee advised the Governor General on the matter of the Order of Canada. I mean, it was absolutely disgraceful.
Oh, thank you. I can't say I disagree with you. Very kind of you to mention it. Canada is a liberal society and justly proud of it, and has an opportunity to lead the world out of the grip of the prison industry and psychology that has been a constant source of abuse for millennia. Unfortunately for me, as a supporter of the Harper government, its entire approach to crime is mistaken. Almost all categories of crime have been in decline for 30 years, yet there's still official talk of a crime wave. The population is aging, which automatically brings a reduction, as older people generally lack the insouciance, as well as the perversity and the energy that the deliberate commission of most crimes requires. Increased use of security cameras and more sophisticated police work deter much more crime than in the past. The entire program to build prisons and engage 80,000 more correctional officers is a colossal waste of money in pursuit of votes the Conservative government already has in its pocket anyway. The imprisonment of nonviolent people is just an heirloom of a barbarous age. It does no good for the convicted. The public is not spared any risk. It is hideously expensive and is designed to destroy whatever connections the convicted people may still have to stabilizing factors in their lives, such as family. Canada is a liberal society and justly proud of it, and has an opportunity to lead the world out of the grip of the prison industry and psychology that has been a constant source of abuse for millennia. Let's do it.